What if Bronze Age warfare wasn't primitive at all? What if some weapons were so advanced, so precisely engineered, that they vanished completely with the civilizations that built them? A sword whose identical design appeared simultaneously across 7 civilizations, with no known trade route to explain it. A suit of bronze armor that turned a human being into a walking machine, fully formed, with no evolutionary history. No earlier versions, no prototypes, and a naval weapons system so sophisticated it shouldn't have been possible for another 1,000 years. These aren't legends. They're sitting in museums right now, analyzed, documented, measured, and they force one disturbing question. Did the Bronze Age reach a level of military technology we were never meant to remember? In the Bronze Age, metallurgy was regional, deeply regional. Every civilization developed its own techniques, its own alloys, its own blade shapes, shaped by local ore deposits, local traditions, local needs. The Mycenaeans had their long, thrusting swords. The Egyptians had the khopesh, curved, hooked, designed for pulling shields aside. The Hittites favored short, aggressive blades built for chariot warfare. Each civilization had its own weapon identity. That's how ancient warfare worked. Isolated, regional, distinct. Which is why what happened around 1200 BC is so deeply unsettling. Archaeologists began noticing it in the late 19th century. The same sword, appearing everywhere, almost simultaneously. Not similar swords, not swords influenced by a common design. The same sword, same proportions, same blade geometry, same distinctive flanged hilt. The piece that locks the grip in place and prevents the handle from rotating during a strike. They called it the Naue Type II, and they found it in Greece, in Italy, in Egypt, in Anatolia, modern Turkey, in the Levant, modern Syria and Lebanon, in the Balkans, in Central Europe, 7 civilizations, one sword design, all within roughly the same century. Modern weapons analysis tells us this wasn't coincidence. The Naue Type II wasn't just aesthetically similar across regions. The functional geometry was identical. The blade cross-section, the precise shape that determines how the blade flexes, how it transfers force, how it performs under combat stress, was engineered to the same specifications. This was a better sword, demonstrably better. The flanged hilt gave warriors more control. The blade geometry balanced cutting and thrusting. It outperformed every regional design it replaced. And here's what's unsettling. The trade routes of 1200 BC don't explain its spread. We know Bronze Age trade networks well. The Uluburun shipwreck alone documented commerce spanning the entire Mediterranean. But trade moved luxury goods, copper, tin, gold, grain, not standardized military technology. For the same weapon design to appear simultaneously across 7 separate civilizations, civilizations actively in conflict with each other, something else had to be happening. Knowledge was moving, deliberately, systematically. Someone, or some network, was transferring military technology across the entire ancient world at a speed and scale we have no framework to explain. And then 1177 BC arrives. The Bronze Age collapses. Every palace burns. Every civilization falls. And the network that spread this sword, whatever it was, vanishes with them. The Naue Type II survives into the Iron Age. But the knowledge system that created it, that distributed it across an entire world simultaneously, disappears as if it was never there. In 1450 BC, armor didn't exist. Not real armor, not full body protection. Warriors carried shields, large body-length shields that required a second man to carry in battle. They wore linen padding, sometimes reinforced with bronze scales on the chest. Helmets were boar's tusk, rows of curved ivory stitched onto leather. Effective, proven, developed over centuries. Full articulated plate armor, the kind that encases the entire human body in rigid interlocking sections, was a medieval invention. 12th century AD, over 2,000 years away, which makes what was found in a tomb near the village of Dendra, Greece in 1960 almost impossible to explain. The Dendra Panoply is a complete suit of bronze plate armor, full body, articulated at every joint, cuirass, shoulder guards, upper arm protection, lower arm guards, neck protection, leg greaves. It was built in 1450 BC. There are no earlier versions, no prototypes, no experimental half-suits that show its evolution. It appears in the archaeological record fully formed, complete, functional, like someone skipped 2,000 years of weapons development and arrived at the destination first. Modern analysis reveals something that goes beyond impressive craftsmanship. The Dendra Panoply wasn't designed to protect a warrior. It was designed to replace one. The armor restricts individual movement almost completely. You cannot run in the Dendra Panoply. You cannot turn quickly. You cannot react instinctively to a changing battlefield. The weight distribution and rigidity of the bronze plates lock the wearer into a fixed posture, upright, forward-facing, advancing. This wasn't a design flaw. This was the design. Recent experimental archaeology has produced a startling theory. A warrior in the Dendra Panoply, locked into that fixed posture, advancing behind a large shield carried by a support soldier, becomes effectively unkillable by Bronze Age weapons. Bronze spears, bronze arrowheads, bronze sword blades. None of them penetrate full plate armor. The armor didn't ask the warrior to fight. It asked him to advance, step by step, plate by plate, into a formation that couldn't stop him. The Dendra Panoply didn't protect a man. It turned him into a weapon. And that design choice, removing individuality, removing instinct, removing the human element from warfare, appears fully developed in a single artifact, 1,500 years before anyone else thought of it. After 1200 BC, the Dendra Panoply style vanishes completely. The collapse of the Bronze Age palace systems, the scribes, the workshops, the supply chains that could produce and distribute standardized bronze plate, erases this technology entirely. The knowledge to build it, to understand why it worked, disappears for 2,000 years. When plate armor returns in medieval Europe, it will be reinvented from scratch, with no memory that it had already existed. In 1982, a Turkish sponge diver named Mehmet Çakır was working the seabed near Uluburun, a rocky cape off the southern coast of modern Turkey. At around 44 meters depth, he saw something that didn't belong on the ocean floor. Bronze Age copper ingots. Hundreds of them, still stacked. What followed was one of the most important maritime excavations in history. The Uluburun shipwreck, a merchant vessel that sank around 1300 BC. And what it was carrying has never stopped being surprising. The Uluburun ship carried cargo from at least 7 distinct civilizations: Mycenaean Greece, Egypt, Canaan, Cyprus, Assyria, Kassite Babylonia, the Hittite Empire, on a single ship, moving together through the Mediterranean. Among the cargo, weapons, not a warrior's personal arms, a systematic weapons cache, bronze swords of multiple regional types, spearheads, arrowheads in bulk quantities, the kind of volume that supplies an army, not equips a crew. Stone mace heads, and most significantly, tin and copper in the precise ratio required to produce military-grade bronze. This ship wasn't a merchant vessel that happened to carry some weapons. This ship was part of a supply system. The Uluburun wreck reveals something that shouldn't exist in 1300 BC. An international arms trade. Standardized. Cross-civilizational. Operating across the territories of civilizations that were frequently at war with each other. The tin on that ship came from mines in modern Afghanistan, over 3,000 kilometers away. The copper came from Cyprus. The weapons represented designs from half a dozen different military traditions. Someone was aggregating military materials and technology from the entire known world and moving it as a single cargo. Modern researchers have found evidence this wasn't an isolated voyage. Egyptian records, Hittite diplomatic correspondence, Canaanite merchant tablets, all pointing to the same conclusion. A Bronze Age military-industrial supply network operating at a scale and sophistication we have no parallel for until the modern era. This wasn't primitive commerce. This was logistics. The same word we use for moving military supplies today. After 1177 BC, the network collapses overnight. The palace systems that coordinated these shipments burn. The scribes who tracked the cargo lists die or disperse. The merchant classes that operated the routes lose their customers simultaneously. Not one civilization falls, every civilization falls, and the arms network that supplied them all vanishes with them. The sea routes that carried weapons from Afghanistan to Greece go quiet. For centuries, nobody knows they existed. 3 weapons, 3 impossibilities. A sword that spread across the entire ancient world simultaneously, through a knowledge network we can't identify. Armor that replaced medieval plate armor 2,000 years early, and then vanished without descendants. An international arms supply network operating across civilizations that were simultaneously at war, as sophisticated as anything we built before the 20th century. Each one engineered with knowledge that had no business existing in 1300 BC, and each one erased completely by the same event. 1177 BC, the Bronze Age collapse. 30 years in which every palace burns, every trade network dissolves, every scribal tradition disappears.